Arriving at a definition of postmodernism is difficult. Postmodern artists generally reveal a self-consciousness about their place in the art historical continuum. The last chapter of this book will present some movements of the present generation of artists. Keep in mind that many of the artists discussed in this chapter could be placed in more than one category, but most would prefer not to be categorized at all. Postmodern artists resurrect artistic traditions to comment on and reinterpret those styles or idioms. Most art critics and historians agree that in the decade of the 1980s, modern art ended. Many people view postmodernism as a critique of modernism. Rather than being objects of timeless beauty, most art since the 1980s consists of objects laden with information about the period in which we live, such as this photograph by Sandy Skoglund. Contemporary art in general tends to be very personal in nature. Postmodern and contemporary architects celebrate the very qualities of modern: complexity, ambiguity, contradiction, nostalgia, romance, and the rich vulgarity of popular taste. One of the most important postmodern architects is Robert Venturi, who wrote a book in 1972 that brought the entire profession to attention with its self-explanatory title, Learning from Las Vegas. Postmodern architects embrace an eclectic mix of historical influences and decorative tendencies for the general public to relate to. As modernism came to an end, many painters in America and Europe began to revive expressive, personal styles known as Neo-Expressionism. Susan Rothenberg was one of the first Neo-Expressionists who began making symbolic, heavily brushed paintings in which subject matter teeters on the brink of recognizability. Her Blue Head is a painting which outlines a horse's head in front of a human hand. It is a haunting image that resists representation. Her paintings are large, usually extending over 100 inches, in both directions. Eric Fischl is another Neo-Expressionist painter whose subject matter sometimes shocks viewers with its psychological and sexual implications. He paints with a direct fluidity, and the surfaces of his paintings show a love of gesture and color. Neo-Expressionists tend to favor painting because a seemingly infinite variety of surface textures and colors are possible. German artist Anselm Kiefer has produced some of the most engaging works of the contemporary period. His works of the 1970s and 80s are a re-examination of German history, particularly the painful Nazi era of the 1920s and to 1945. Kiefer's work functions on a mythological, historical, as well as personal level, as he himself was German. He has said that his work is in part an exorcism of the guilt he feels for his German heritage. Photographers influenced by the postmodern condition show through their pictures that they are aware their medium is not an objective one. American artist Cindy Sherman, in her untitled film stills, addresses the way that much of Western art has been constructed to present female beauty for the enjoyment of the male gaze. This is a primary focus of contemporary feminist theory. She initially produced more than 80 black and white photographs for the series, which she began in 1977. Sherman considered how representation with the camera constructs reality, and this led her to rethink how her own image was conveyed. She got the idea for untitled film stills when she was shown some softcore pornography and was struck by the stereotypical ways women were depicted. She produced her own series of photographs, designing, acting in, and directing the works, taking control of her own image and constructing her own identity. Many of the images have loose reference to B-movies without making a specific reference to any film. The body is the most potent symbol in contemporary sculpture, and today artists continue to explore new meaning in the figure. Contemporary sculptors see the body not as a vehicle for idealism or beauty, but rather for commenting on the ways in which culture shapes our bodies and how we think about them. Like many artists, Kiki Smith is influenced by current events. and this influence is reflected in her work. In 1995, when the frozen body of a Stone Age man was found in the Alps, she created her sculpture Iceman as a commentary. She made a life-size sculpture of an unclothed man found in the same position of the Iceman. She hung the work on the wall of the gallery, attached by its back. The work became an object of curiosity, a specimen, just as the frozen Stone Age man was for the anthropologists who studied it. The idea of public art goes back to ancient times. Government and religious leaders have commissioned many of history's best-known artists to execute works for the public view. Only in recent decades have commissions for public art gone to large numbers of American artists. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial is a public artwork that was designed by Maya Lin. Maya Lin was awarded this commission at the age of 21. The austere memorial is a V-shaped wall constructed of black granite panels. They begin at ground level at each end and gradually ascend to a height of 10 feet in the center of the V. The names of the Vietnam War's 57,939 American casualties and those missing in action are inscribed on the wall in order of their deaths. The memorial, which draws thousands of visitors each day, drew considerable opposition when the plans were announced. Some of the critics saw the memorial as anti-heroic, as it was in stark contrast to the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. Also, the memorial was not figurative in nature. Ultimately, the Commission of Fine Arts commissioned an additional memorial to be built. The larger-than-life realistic bronze sculpture depicts 3 soldiers armed and in uniform, and was placed 120 feet from Maya Lin's memorial. Many artists in the last 20 years have sought to link their art to the current social questions. Issue-oriented artists believe that if they limit their art to aesthetic matters, then their work will only be a distraction from pressing problems. Fred Wilson creates art about racism and class bias. In 1992, the Maryland Historical Society invited the African-American artist to rearrange the exhibits on one floor and create an installation called Mining the Museum. He found no portraits of noted African-American Marylanders, such as Frederick Douglass or Harriet Tubman. He instead found busts of Henry Clay, Andrew Jackson, and Napoleon Bonaparte, none of whom ever lived in Maryland. He exhibited those 3 busts next to 3 empty pedestals to symbolize the missing African Americans. Exploring the politics of identity has been an important activity for people from many different walks of life. The artist Jane Quick-to-See Smith is a Native American artist of Shoshone descent. Her Native heritage informs her art, and her concern for the invisibility of Native American artists has led her to organize exhibitions of their art. Quick-to-See Smith's mixed media canvases are full of references to her Native American identity. Some of the elements in this work, such as the bold red X, symbolize both negation and the Native American spiritual concept of the 4 directions. From the mixture of the sacred and profane, this artist constructs her own identity. The Iranian-born Shirin Nasha similarly reflects on the questions of a woman's identity in today's global society. She grew up before the Islamic Revolution of 1979, studied in the West, and has returned to Iran several times since. She works in various media, but most recently has made films. The film Passage tells a story of death and rebirth in the desert. Bill Viola has spent much of his artistic career exploring the capabilities of digitized imagery, producing many video installations. New media is that which is made with technology. It represents an art form that is developing quickly as 21st century technology is becoming more present. Bill Viola often focuses on sensory perception. His pieces not only heighten viewer awareness of the senses, but also suggest an exploration into the spiritual realm. Viola, an American, spent years seriously studying Buddhist, Christian, Sufi, and Zen mysticism. He fervently believes in art's transformative power and encourages spectator introspection. His recent video projects involve such techniques as extreme slow motion, contrasts in scale, shifts in focus, mirrored reflections, and multiple or layered screens to achieve dramatic events. It seems as we move into the new millennium that one of the major trends is a relaxation of the traditional boundaries between artistic media. The universally expanding presence of computers, technology, and the internet will surely have an effect on the history of art. Few generations have had the opportunity to pioneer a new medium. Ours has had the opportunity to pioneer many.